CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Child and bride are two words that just don't sound right together. Add Canadian to that, and it seems downright shocking. But as we'll hear tonight, child marriages happen every year here. So we'll look into where, how, and why. Then we'll tune into the province's construction industry about confronting and overcoming discrimination. It's Tuesday, February 9th, and that's ahead on the agenda. Researchers at McGill University recently published a paper showing that child marriage is not only legal in Canada, but also happens across the country in spite of efforts by the federal government to clamp down on the practice overseas. Why does it persist and what should be done about it? Let's hear from one of the researchers on that study, and that's Alyssa Koski. She's assistant professor in the Department of Biostatistics and Occupational Health at McGill University, and she joins us from Montreal, Quebec. We also welcome in East York and the provincial capital, Rowena Pinto, who's the Chief Program Officer at UNICEF Canada. Delighted to have you two aboard for this very disturbing, I must say, conversation and topic. And Alyssa, let's just start with the basics. How are you defining child marriage?
Good place to start. Child marriage is any marriage before the age of 18. And that includes what we refer to as both formal and informal marriages. Formal marriages are, I think, what many Canadians picture when they hear the word marriage. You have some sort of ceremony, religious or civil, and you have a marriage certificate. But it also includes informal marriages, which are what we often refer to as common law marriages. So you're living together with a partner, and for all intents and purposes, you're married, but you don't have a marriage certificate.
Would a childhood betrothal, which is, I guess, common in some ethnic groups and some demographics, would that be included in this as well?
Typically, I think if the children are living together as though they're married, which typically means we're sharing a household, we're intimate partners, for example, then it would count.
Okay, when did the law change to allow 16-year-olds to get married?
The Civil Marriage Act was updated in 2015. Prior to that, each province and territory had a little more leeway in determining the minimum age at marriage. But in 2015, that minimum age was set at 16 across the country.
And why did they think, in the wisdom of the government of the day that did that, why did they think that was a good idea?
I wish I knew. I wish I had an answer for you. What is clear is that even at that time, under the Harper government, which was in power at the time, that they understood that child marriage meant any marriage before the age of 18. John Baird was doing a lot of advocacy around ending child marriage, even under the Harper administration. So this was a human rights issue that the government was very aware of at the time. Why they decided not to go with 18 as the minimum age and instead lower that to 16, I don't know.
Do we infer from your comments you don't think it was a particularly good idea?
Well, I'm wondering about that discrepancy. I'm wondering why, even at that time, we were advocating that other countries work to end child marriage. But then when we had the opportunity to put laws in place that would have helped us work toward that end, we opted not to.
Rowena, let's pick up the story now with you. Does UNICEF Canada keep track of child marriage statistics in Canada?
Not specifically, but we do actually obviously monitor it around the world, and not surprised that there is still a child marriage problem here in Canada. The conditions that promote child marriage, which are often marginalized populations, poverty, lack of education and information, children, girls being cut off from social networks. That exists here in Canada as well. So it is unfortunate to hear that our laws are not in line with the Convention on the Rights of the Child or the Convention on Human Rights, both of which actually, as Elisa was saying, state that child marriage is anyone married under the age of 18. And in fact, that is considered forced at any time around the world.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second here, because we've titled this segment, "Is Child Marriage a Problem in Canada?" We're asking the question. You've just answered that question. You say it is, but But let's go here anyway. If two young kids fall in love and want to get married and they're only 16, why is that a problem?
Well, I think from a global perspective, we've really seen what that does to girls, especially. So when girls get married very, very young, they often have children very young. Often their bodies are not even ready to have children, so there's actually higher rates of child mortality and maternal mortality. But children are then cut off from school. They're cut off from opportunities. Often, there's an opportunity to grow their skills. Girls especially become more cut off from social networks and from resources that can help them. And you're actually, you're hurting both parties, if they're both children, both parties' futures. So I do think this is something that is an issue. We know we need certain aspects for a child to become and grow into a strong adult that has opportunities. And child marriage is not one of those ways.
All right. With that background in place, we want to introduce now somebody else to our conversation for whom this is all too real a topic. We welcome, in the downtown core of Ontario's capital city, Samra Zafar, author of A Good Wife, Escaping the Life I Never Chose, who is also a mental health and human rights advocate and speaker. Samra, how do we put this? You had experience as a child bride. Tell us a bit about your story, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I was a child bride at the age of 16. I was forced into marriage. I grew up in Abu Dhabi. I'm originally from Pakistan. And then I was actually shipped off to Canada as a child bride. So my marriage didn't happen in Canada. But I'm sure my immigration application came in front of some immigration officer, and my age at the time of marriage was under 18, but it was all perfectly legal. And I'm not surprised to learn that child marriage licenses are being issued in this country as we speak for children under 18. And to all the points that Rowena just mentioned, I have lived those. I became a teenage mother. My education was put to a stop. I suffered a lot of mental health issues, depression and anxiety and abuse and domestic violence. And the marriage just kept getting worse and worse and worse through the years until 10 years later, I was in a situation where I was afraid for my life. And the violence had escalated that it was, I thought, that I would be killed one day. I left eventually the marriage and I went to university and completed my education and built a new life for myself and my daughters. And the reason I chose to tell that story is because I know all too personally that that story is not just my story. It is the story of millions and millions of girls around the world. And now we know thousands of girls in Canada too. And as an author, as I have traveled from coast to coast to coast, doing book tours and speaking tours, I cannot tell you how many times I have heard stories from survivors of child marriage, from teachers, from educators who would tell me that girls in their classes are being taken away back home or they're being forced into marriage here. One particular woman in Vancouver told me that when she was 16, her father signed off on some piece of paper, which was apparently a marriage kit from a drugstore shelf, and forced her to marry a 30-year-old man, and it was all perfectly legal. So a girl under 18 in Canada can't vote, can't buy alcohol, can't have property, cannot have a credit card, oftentimes cannot get custody of her children because she's a minor, but we're allowing her to enter the most important legal contract of her life, which is marriage, all with the signature of a parent or legal guardian.
Okay, thank you for that, Samra. Let me jump in with some follow-up questions if I can, and forgive me if these are personal, but I mean, your story is so important to us better understanding this whole issue. Did you love your husband when you first met him?
I didn't even know him. I hadn't even met him before the day of my wedding. So I had no idea what love was back then. I was 16, and you just asked the question, if two 16-year-olds are in love, like, they're kids. I'm a mom to a 19-year-old, and she thinks she's absolutely in love with her boyfriend, and maybe she is, according to her definition right now, but is she ready and mature enough to get married? No. So, no, I wasn't. And after my marriage, for a little while, I thought I was, because in the beginning it was not that bad. It was good. And but now when I look back in hindsight, I had no idea who he was.
You were 16, and how old was he?
He was the 29. He was 28, 29.
He was that much older than you?
Yeah, he was 11, 12 years older than I was.
Do you have any contact with him anymore?
No, absolutely not.
Does he
Not
see
me.
his children?
No. My kids don't see him. They've chosen not to see him.
Got it. So not his choice, your choice.
My kid's choice.
The kid's choice, yeah.
Yes.
When's the last time you had any contact with him?
Oh, it's been years. We sometimes, my older daughter, for example, just started university. So I informed him that she has, but that's not really any kind of meaningful contact. He's not involved in our lives at all.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you in a position, I mean, it seems obvious on the face of it what the answer to this is, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Were you able to say no when your family told you, here's the guy you're marrying and you're doing it now?
No, I wasn't. And there was an illusion of no. And I'm just going to elaborate on that point a little bit, that oftentimes people think force is having a gun put to your head or a knife to your throat and a child being taken kicking and screaming against their will into some room and tied up or whatnot. But that's not what force really looks like in real life. Force is coercion. It's pressure. It's setting expectations that are unrealistic on a child who doesn't want to disappoint their parents. And in my case, that's what happened. The whole family orchestrated this. Everybody was super happy about this. And me, as a 15, 16-year-old girl who was naive, and in high school, I was in grade 11 when I was first informed of this, I tried to resist in my own little ways, like, no, I'm scared, or I don't want to do this, or I'm having nightmares about this. But everybody would tell me, like, no, this is the best thing that could happen to you. How can you be so ungrateful? How can you go against this? And when everyone around you tells you that, as a child, you just don't want to disappoint your parents. So that survivor in Vancouver said, well, if my father even took me in front of a judge and the judge asked me, well, I don't want to upset my dad. And if he's saying to me that if you don't marry this man, you're not going to be part of the family anymore and we won't love you anymore. So even though it may have been, I could have said no and run away, but no child will do that. So realistically, no, there is no choice. And no 16-year-old or 17-year-old should even be given that choice or put into that position.
Understood. Thank you very much for answering those questions. I know this is all very personal, but it really helps us understand this issue better. Rowena, let me get you back into the conversation here. Where in this world, as in what countries or regions, is this a particular issue?
Well, overall, about 12 million girls get married under the age of 18 globally. The areas that have the biggest proportion of girls getting married under the age of 18 are sub-Saharan Africa. About 35% of girls get married there, and about 30% of girls in South Asia. But there is a global effort to end child marriage. The problem is that with the pandemic, we're actually worried that a lot of the progress that we've seen happen in this, where we went about 25 years ago to about 1 in 4 girls getting married under the age of 18 to now 1 in 5, we'll actually see this number grow over the next decade with an additional 13 million girls getting married under the age of 18.
Alyssa, do we have any sense about what percentage are forced into marriage, as was the case with Samra, and what percentage choose it of their own volition, even though they're underage?
Well, as Rowena said, in some interpretations, children under the age of 18 aren't in a place to actually give their consent to a contract such as marriage. So in some interpretations, all child marriages could be considered forced, but there are no great statistics that separate child marriage from forced marriage explicitly.
And is this a thing in Canada?
Absolutely. The research that I just completed shows that we have given marriage certificates to children under the age of 18 in literally every province and territory across the country. And Steve, I want to go back to a point that you raised a few minutes ago. You played devil's advocate and asked about a 16-year-old and another 16-year-old. It's a nice thought, right? And it's something that I'm often asked when I talk about my research. What about 2 young kids who are just a bit precocious? The data that I have from across the country show that that is almost never the case. This is something that's happening overwhelmingly to girls in Canada, and that's very reflective of the child marriage patterns that the Rowena is talking about in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And we find that in many cases, these are young girls who are being married to much older men. In Canada, we've seen cases as extreme as 16-year-olds married to men over the age of 50.
Well, we have a chart here that we want to bring up, and I wonder if you would sort of guide us through this. And we do have a number of people listening to us right now on podcast as opposed to being able to see this chart. So I wonder if you could describe it in some detail here. These are marriage certificates granted to those age 16 and 17, and we take a look at 5 provinces in particular: Alberta, BC, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec. And the lines, well, you can take us through this, but the answer is not zero. This is still happening quite a bit. Why don't you take us through this?
Sure. This is a table taken from the research that I recently published, and it shows how common child marriage is in these 5 provinces: Alberta, British Columbia, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec, between the years 2000 and 2018. And what we see is that this practice is ongoing in all of those 5 provinces, and I can tell you that it is in the rest of the country as well. It's not just these 5. We also see that this is becoming slightly less common over time in nearly all of these provinces, but we do see a difference in the prevalence across the country. In particular, Alberta and Manitoba and Saskatchewan, in addition to those, tend to have higher rates than Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia. So we do see differences in how common. Again, I would love to know the answer to that question. I don't have a clear answer for you right now. This was the first study that looked at child marriage in Canada. So it's really our first effort to get a sense of how common it is.
Do you take some satisfaction, though, in the fact that the chart may have started up here, but as it went across, it did go down? I mean, this looks like a problem that is solving itself, if we can put it that way, in as much as the forces that are against this practice happening seem to be prevailing. And if we assume that the lines are going to continue to go in that direction, might this be a problem in Canada, at any rate, that disappears within a decade?
Well, the lines certainly are going down, which means they're moving in the right direction. But again, as Rowena said, this is a trend that we're seeing across the globe. Right? Child marriage rates in the last 20 years have gone down fairly substantially in just about every country where we look at this. That said, I don't think there's a reason to believe that child marriage just goes away if you don't address the underlying causes of it. Rowena mentioned some of them: gender inequality, the idea that girls should get married at very young ages, poverty, lack of access to education or jobs that they may want. So I don't think there's a reason to believe that this is just something that peters out of its own accord. And I will say that in every country where it remains legal, for example, in many countries in Western Europe, Canada is certainly not alone in continuing to permit child marriage, that this still continues to happen at very low levels. So I don't know of a country that continues to legally permit it where it simply doesn't happen anymore.
I'm going to ask our director, Sheldon Osman, top of page 4, Sheldon, if you would. Let's get these statistics up, because while we've been very clear on the impact on young girls of child marriage, there's an impact on boys, too. So let's bring this chart up here. An estimated 115 million boys and men around the world were married as children. Of these, 1 in 5 children, or 23 million, were married before the age of 15. Rowena, let's look at the other side of this coin. What effect does this have on young boys?
Well, it's probably very similar. The percentage is less, obviously. But that being said, when you marry 2 children who don't have a lot of choice and are now forced into an adult relationship, you can imagine the stress that puts on young children. So this is a common practice. And as, Elisa was talking about formal and informal unions, we see child marriages where both children are children. That's more prevalent in Latin America, for example. But again, when you have children married so young and engaging in sexual activity before they're ready, having children before they're necessarily ready, while they're still children themselves, you are cutting them off from their futures. That really, really does narrow their ability to really move forward in a way that we would like it to see all children be given the opportunity. We are stealing their childhood by enabling this.
Samara, I wonder if I could come back to you with the next question, and that is, you are, through the course of your book tour and your speaking engagements, obviously trying to fight the good fight against this practice. Do you think you're making any headway?
Well, I mean, I just looked at the chart you put up, and we were talking about the numbers going down. Where I come in is that even one is too many, and like I said, I've personally lived it, but I've also seen it with so many women reaching out to me every single day on social media in Canada who are telling me that they have been either brought in as child brides or they have been forced into marriage here. So the numbers that we're seeing don't even take into account the girls that are being brought into the country, like myself, or the girls that are being taken back home in the summer vacation for whatever reason and forced into marriage there. So I think these numbers are understated and definitely they kind of give you a glimpse of the problem of child marriage. But I think if you take into account all those other ways that child marriages happen and child brides continue to be brought into the country, I think the numbers in reality would be a lot higher.
Let me do a follow-up on age, because you pointed out your husband back in the day. You were 16. He was a decade older, more than a decade older than you. Is that typical, or is it more similar aged people are being married off?
Exactly what Alyssa said. That is in the majority of child marriages are underage girls with older men, and that's why child marriage almost always results in abuse, because it's already starting from a place of power imbalance. A lot of these girls don't even know their basic rights in this country. When I came here as a child bride, I thought that I would be deported if I reported the abuse or if I chose to walk away from him when the violence started happening. I had no idea about my rights, about what options I had, and I stayed for a very long time because I had no way of going outside and even getting any kind of information. So a lot of these girls aren't aware of their rights. They are completely dependent financially, emotionally, and in every other way on that person, on that man who's now their husband. When there is such a gross power imbalance to start with, and abuse is all about power and control. And a lot of these girls are being controlled, and some of the cultural nuances that permit or propagate this atrocity is because they want to get young girls who can be controlled and molded and will kind of fall into the family. And in fact, I was told that by my parents-in-law. We all used to live together, and they would say to me, well, we picked you because we thought you were young and we could just mold you into whoever we wanted you to be.
And one more quick follow-up. Did your first really quite tragic experience with marriage sour you on the institution of marriage entirely for the rest of your life?
Not at all. Absolutely not. Quite the contrary. I'm an eternal optimist. I'm a very positive person, and I am very blessed to have a lot of good men in my life as friends, as mentors, and I love them to pieces. And when it happens, if that person comes along, I'm totally fine with going ahead with marriage. So no issues with marriage at all. I think what my experience was not depictive of all marriages in the world, that's for sure.
Okay, good to know. Alyssa, let me get back to you now. What has Canada done in terms of committing itself to ending this practice?
Well, the government has really put itself out at the forefront of global efforts to end child marriage. Our federal government has co-sponsored United Nations resolutions on this issue. We give millions and millions of dollars to end child marriage internationally. And in fact, it's explicitly addressed in our government's current foreign policy. So essentially, we couldn't be doing much more on the international front to try to end this practice. The problem is, as I see it, that we've essentially turned a blind eye to the fact that child marriage remains legal and continues at home.
So the first thing, presumably, you'd like to see is a ban put in place on it, maybe raise the legal age to what?
If we raise the legal age to 18, that would certainly put us in line with our international commitments.
You think that's still too young, 18?
Well, if you're asking my personal opinion, I certainly wouldn't want to get married at 18, and I'm sure that a lot of children are not mature enough to do it at that point. But 18 is consistent with our notions of adulthood in much of Canada, right? When people turn 18, they're permitted to vote. We allow them to rent their own apartments. We allow them to buy alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana in most provinces, right? We assume that they've reached a level of maturity where they're able to manage those sorts of things. The fact that we allow marriage before we would allow access to those other rights seems to me like a very strange oddity. So, again, raising the age to 18 would put us in line with what the Canadian government is already advocating that other countries do. So we're very much in a pot calling the kettle black sort of situation here.
And just to get a better understanding of in Canada who does this, we may be under the impression that it is, I mean, if we take Summer's example, it's people from somewhere else, right, who've immigrated to Canada. They may have different customs from those communities or demographics that have been here for multiple generations. Is that in fact the case?
It used to be. When we looked at the Canadian census in 2001 and 2006, we did find that children who were born outside of Canada were slightly more likely to get married as children than their peers who were actually born here in Canada. But in more recent years, by the time of the 2016 census, that has changed. And children who are born in Canada are now more likely to be married as children than those who are born outside the country. So the idea that this is a practice that's happening primarily among immigrant communities or those who may have been married as children and coming in to the country from somewhere else doesn't hold water in more recent years.
Rowena, let me give you the last word on this. What do you think the government of Canada ought to do about this immediately?
Well, as Alyssa said, changing the law would be a first great step. It would send a really strong message. But we can't really stop there. We've seen in other parts of the world, even countries that have outlawed child marriage still have issues with it. It does require education. It requires a real deliberate effort to change social norms. Our education system needs to address this and build agency amongst children, especially girls, so that they know their rights and they know and they have confidence to know that this is not their only option in life. And we have to deal with the income inequality, which is often a huge issue. So there's a lot of, we have to look at a multi-pronged approach on this. It's not as easy as changing a law. It will require education. Our school systems have to support girls more. We have to look at income security, food security, and we have to look at better resources for girls everywhere.
I think we know a lot more about it right now than we did a half an hour ago, and that's thanks to Alyssa Koski from McGill University, Samra Zafar, and we are happy to recommend her book, The Good Wife, Escaping the Life I Never Chose, and Rowena Pinto from UNICEF Canada. My thanks to the three of you for coming on to TVO tonight and sharing your views. Take care out there, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
A noose found hanging at a construction site is disturbing. That it happened 5 times? Well, that's beyond awful. But it's what happened recently in the provincial capital, and that's only one such incident. Acts of that sort have now prompted people in the trades and a number of construction companies to try to move the needle on racism and sexism in their industry. With us now, for more on that, in Mississauga, Ontario, Samuel Ajobo. He's an estimator at Ellis-Don and chair of the company's Alliance of Black Employee Experience and Leadership. In Markham, Ontario, Sefton Spence, vice president of the Afro-Canadian Contractors Association. He's also the CEO of Cubby Construction. And in Rexdale, in the northwestern part of the provincial capital, Rosemarie Powell. She's executive director at Toronto Community Benefits Network. Great to have you three with us tonight here on TVO. I want to just start with a very general question to each of you and find out why you chose to pursue a career in construction. Rosemarie, you want to start us off?
It's really wonderful to be here today. Yeah, so a career in construction, not necessarily me. As a woman, it's not something that I ever thought that I would be able to do. But really, I'm not a construction worker, but a community organizer. And what I do is to ensure that young people and people who have been left out of the construction industry are able to get access to good jobs and opportunities whenever there's a major infrastructure project that is being built.
We'll find out why that may be a problem as we go along. Sefton Spence, how about you? Why are you in construction?
Well, how you doing? Well, construction, it goes all the way back to Randolph Townsend that took me underneath his wings from a young age and said, here you go. I want you to come with me. But the only problem was he made me push a broom for 6 months. I wasn't able to do any work, but he wanted to say, if you are able to run the cleanest site, you'll be a good worker one day. So that's how I got into construction, through Randolph Townsend, mentor.
How long ago was that?
Man, I was 12 years old. So that's about 35, 40 years ago.
Oh, well, okay, fantastic. And Samuel, how about you? Why are you in the trade you're in?
You know, for me, construction allowed me the opportunity to be able to apply my, my undergraduate studies into various elements of life. And it allows me to meet a lot of people and to be able to have the opportunity to develop a career that brings together a lot of systems and projects, and also builds a lot of communities, and also meet a lot of people and build a lot of great relationships.
That is all true, Samuel, but I'm going to do a follow-up with you. It cannot have escaped your notice, obviously, in the years that you've been doing this, which is more than a decade now, that there aren't too many people in construction who look like you. Is that a problem for you?
Yes, it is a problem for me, Steve. And first of all, thank you for bringing me on the show to talk about this. And yes, you're correct. There is not a lot of people that look like me, but I believe, moments like this are times that will help to bridge that gap and make things happen.
Sefton, how about you? The fact that there aren't too many people who look like you in the construction trades, how problematic in your eyes?
Problematic? It is problematic, and it will change over the next couple years. I think there is a great unleash of knowledge and wealth and understanding about the problems that we have as systemic racism, different things like that, that is coming to the forefront. And I believe that these areas will change.
Rosemarie, can I get your judgment on whether you think or how well you think the sector is doing on issues around diversity and inclusion, equity, that kind of thing?
The sector does not have a good track record. That being said, people of color and Black people have been building up this country for many years prior to the time of slavery. And so it is important that we are recognized for the important work that we are doing, building up our communities and building the prosperity of this country.
And your network, what role does it play in the construction industry?
We're an organization that comes together with different stakeholders to be able to create change. We're a community labor coalition, so we've built a network of over 120 organizations and groups, and labor organizations and groups, and social enterprises as well. We have 10 of the largest construction unions who are members of the TCBN, and who recognize that change needs to happen and that they are going to diversify in partnership with the community.
Do you think you're making progress?
I think we absolutely are. TCBN is a 5-year-old organization, and we have seen a lot of change since then. Our first project, the Eglinton Crosstown, has hired more than 350 people so far on that project alone, and we have over 5 projects that we're managing now. And just recently, we got a really great commitment from the City of Toronto for a 10% target of equity-seeking groups onto the construction projects that the city is building. So, and we're going to see more changes going forward with all these stakeholders coming together.
Samuel, give me an example of an initiative you might have undertaken at Ellis Don to try to move the yardsticks forward.
So, Steve, for us in Ellis Don, when we, recently when we encounter recent incidents around racism and overt actions around racism, the senior management in Ellis Don, Jeff, Kieran, and all of these people stood up to say, we got to put a team together to assist us in bringing visibility, awareness, education to all of these things that are going on. And within Ellis Don, we formed a group called the Alliance of Black Employee Experience and Leadership. And with this group, it incorporates more than 47 members of Ellis Don that are Black and non-Black allying together to bring about education and awareness and empowerment into the industry, both within Ellis Don and outside Ellis Don, and into our communities, and this includes working with neighborhood schools. This includes working with local organizations and other underrepresented and underserved communities and organizations. And this includes working internally with our employees in-house to ensure that they are well served and their equity and inclusion is taking a high priority within Elliston.
Okay, I understand that mission statement, but what does that actually look like in terms of making actual progress on the job, on the ground?
So number one is for ABLE, which I call the Alliance of Black Employee Experience and Leadership, is two things: education and empowerment simultaneously. In regards to education, the first thing we're doing in-house is setting up a lot of initiatives in-house around materials, around book clubs, movie clubs, around events that allows us to raise the awareness around racism and all the overt actions and how these things are not supposed to be having a place in our industry. On the other piece is the empowerment piece, which ensures that we work with local organizations, we work with schools across the country to ensure that we bring awareness into the pipeline and into some of the challenges we are facing right now in the industry, which is we are having a lot of retirees that are leaving the industry, and we need to fill that gap. And our goal is to ensure that the pipeline of employees coming in from the future generation, our students, they grow into a workplace, an industry that is actually taking the right steps in ensuring equal representations of Black people and other underrepresented groups, and also ensures that people that are underserved have equitable positions within leadership position in places like Elliston.
Okay, understood. Sefton, let me put the same question to you. At the Afro-Canadian Contractors Association, what are you trying to do to make progress?
Well, what our mandate is to bring Black construction workers to the forefront. And by doing that, we have, again, missed the mark. There have been a lot of minority situations that has gone out where the government has allotted funds to the minority groups, but because they could not find them for three different reasons: one, they didn't know of the situation; two, they weren't aware of how to get or access the situation; or the third part is not being able to come to the table at the same time others were at the table in discussing and taking a slice of the pie. With that, now we are enabling the Black community, as in minorities in the construction industry, to have access to it. By them having access to it, now they don't have a right to say, we did not know. They don't have a right to say that we weren't privileged to the information. But by doing that now, we are teaching the construction workers in many aspects. For those that are not incorporated, that want to be incorporated, we're allowing them to have that knowledge. For them that needs to know how to read a tender, that gives them access to now better job opportunities. We allow that also. We're teaching them on every single level that there is to become a better contractor within the system. Not only that, we're allowing them to have awareness on every level of all the different opportunities that is happening within their area. Now, this spreads not just for Ontario, but we're from all the way from Vancouver all the way to Nova Scotia. So this is a national event in which we're pushing forward.
Understood. I want to take you back to what I said right off the top of this discussion, and that is, nooses have been found in the city of Toronto on construction sites over the past year. Rosemary, you talked about the Eglinton Crosstown and how happy you were to see people of color getting job opportunities there. There was a noose found on a construction site there. The Michael Garron Hospital, 15 minutes from this studio. There were nooses found there as well, 2 nooses. Black construction workers found them. The noose, of course, evocative of a time in the awful history of the United States when blacks were taken out by gangs and lynched. Nooses put above trees and Black people lynched. It's a bit like seeing a swastika on the side of a synagogue if you're a Jewish person. I'd like to know, Rosemary, when you heard about these incidents, I want to know what your reaction was to them.
Well, it was demoralizing. And we heard that directly from the members of our Next Gen Builders mentoring program, which is a program that's funded by the Ontario government to support Black youth to access the trades. And we had hundreds of them in our program, and it resonated throughout our network. And it was very sad. That being said, there were some organizations that really stepped up. Elliston stepped up, ACON stepped up. We had the Carpenters Union, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Our members and unions and industry partners really stepped up and said, no, together we have to dismantle anti-Black racism and systemic racism within our industry. And one of the first things that we did was to really bring together some of the leaders from the construction industry together, especially those Black leaders who have been enduring in the system for years. And we had an information session, a webinar where over 500 people attended and really heard from people who have the lived experience in the industry, and to talk about the impacts that this systemic and anti-Black racism has on them, and what we need to do as a community, as an industry together to really just tear it down from the roots. And we are working in partnership with these different organizations. We have established the Building Diversity Awards and Recognition Program, which is one way of really working with the industry to, number one, not just patting yourselves on the back, but saying, let's do an assessment of what our workplace looks like. Let's look at the benchmarks for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to say, what are the areas that we need to change, and take some intentional efforts to do continuous improvement over the next several years. Because we know that this has been ingrained in the industry for so many years, for over 100 years. It's going to take time and intentional effort to be able to create the change that we want to see. But we know that in partnership with ACON, Elliston, and these general contractors and our union partners, and the community, of course, is really key. And those individuals with the lived experience working in these workplaces and within these systems, we're going to be able to see change.
Samuel, I want to follow up with you. I guess one of the things that made these findings of these nooses on construction sites so appalling was that it happened just in the aftermath of the George Floyd killing in Minnesota, which meant that people were attuned to this issue, to the issue of racism in a way that they hadn't been before, and yet some idiot still felt it was appropriate to do something like this. That's very discouraging. I wonder what your reaction was at the time.
Honestly, to you, Steve, it was distraughting. It was sad. Just as Rosemary said, it really brought the energy level. It brought that bad, sour environment. But you know what? In that moment, what really matters was people coming together. Leaders like Jeff Smith and other leaders within the industry coming together to say, you know what, this is something that is an issue, and we need to come together to support our Black employees and Black members of our communities, and even other underrepresented groups within our workforce. And we brought together employees in the workplace to discuss, why is this happening? Why do people feel comfortable enough to be able to carry out such actions? And credit to Elliston, and to this I want to say that they've been doing a lot of things even years before this around inclusive diversity, but stepping up to say this, what we were doing is not enough. We need to take it a notch further. And that brought together those discussions, and that brought together the fact of we need to kind of categorize this into short-term actions, mid-term actions, and long-term actions. And to Rosemary's point earlier, is really raising the awareness and also ensuring that we look into equity, building equity for Black people within the industry to ensure that people like myself can see Black leaders within construction sites, within the offices, and that builds that level of respect, that level of equitable representation that people feel they can do those kind of things to people of my color and people like myself. Also, we are to up our mental health access, mental health awareness access, And also, we also have to ensure that we don't sit comfortable in our reporting system. We have to ensure we create some upgrades to our reporting system so that people have a voice. People can encourage to bring to the forefront people that are engaging in these actions. So just to keep the long story short, the fact is, as Rosemary said, allyship, people coming together, really encourage people like myself to say, we got to step up, we got to stand together, and we got to propel this change. And really seeing intentional actions help to propel our trust again, because trust was broken, and I felt that broken trust. But seeing people coming together help to make that happen again for someone like myself.
Just before I get Sefton back in here, we should, I guess we should mention, you talked about Jeff Smith in that answer, and Jeff Smith is the owner and head of Ellis Don. The Don in Ellis Don is Don Smith, his dad, who started the company, of course, many, many decades ago. So I thought I'd just explain that. Okay, Sefton, let's hear from you on this. And in answering the question, maybe you can tell us, during the course of your career, how much racism you yourself have experienced on the job.
Wow. You know what? I want to thank Rosemary and Samuel for their answers. It's really strengthening to hear those words, and to also not only hearing the words, but I've heard and I've seen the responses that has been put forward by them. Now, the experience in the workforce, I have many times receive and jobs from different organizations, different companies, where we've come in to build a complete a structure. And after being on the phone, going through the emails, sending in the tenders, receiving the welcome packages, now going out to meet who's in charge, and you sit there and you wait in the office, and the person comes out once and they look around. They come out twice, they look around. Then they come out the third time. This is half an hour after our bid there. And they said, has Mr. Spence shown up yet? Well, the situation is Mr. Spence has been here for about 40 minutes, and I'm Spence. And on the way back to the office where you hand over your package with all your certificates and everything like that, now you sit down in the office and he tells you that the job is no longer available. This is after when you've done all the procurement, you've done everything already to secure the job, and even transfer of information, security codes, different things like that. That has happened. And it's happened more than once in my experience. Many times because I don't have maybe a strong accent when it's necessary. They mistakenly and think, oh, you were of a different, culture. So, but when I go out on site and they look at me, then they go, oh, okay, this doesn't work. So it's happened many times. I've had also recently with my own son in Vancouver, finding a noose right beside himself, put there by another worker. It touches home. It changes your look. It changes your thoughts. It makes you think, what did you do wrong? Where did I go wrong?
Sefton, let me jump in here. Do you think it's possible the people who do these things with the nooses don't appreciate the significance or the gravity of that action?
Ignorance goes a long way. And I think, yes, there is a gravity that they don't understand because they haven't gone through the process. They haven't gone through the lifestyle. Now, I can't say that I have also gone through it as such, but my son out in Vancouver first, they targeted his car and they wrote nigger on the side of his car. I'm going to put it out there frankly. But the community rallied around him. And even the dealership where he went to get his car looked at to be refixed, they took it and they redid his whole entire car just because of what somebody else in their ignorance had done. Now, within the community, and there's that fear within the construction workers because they're not too sure what the next step is. So that's why agencies like TCCBN and Samuel over there at Ellis Don are really necessary. And here at ACA, it's really necessary that we as a whole strengthen the community bring them together with knowledge and understanding, and put them together so that they could stand up again, because this thing beats them down and they're not too sure on what is it that they need to do in going forward.
Rosemarie, I also want to bring gender into this discussion. And, well, to do so, let me try this. I saw a comment on Twitter the other day which said something to the effect of, we're never going to see 50-50 male-female participation in the construction industry because there are not that many women who want to be roofers when it's -12 outside. Okay, so we have that issue, and then we have the issue of fairness and access to jobs that more women might actually want to have in construction. Can you talk about that, and how much of the disparity in numbers comes from the fact that as many women as men don't want to be in construction, and how much of it is still there are too many barriers to those who want to be in?
It's complex. It really is. And it really starts from before you're even born. As a woman in society, we are told and we are socialized to not believe that we actually have an opportunity in the trades, that we can do heavy work, that we can do work outside and in the cold. But you know what? Things are changing, and there are more women, and we see it in our work, who are actually demanding access into the trades and into these good opportunities, because especially within the unionized sector, these are good jobs that start out as an apprentice with no experience, making over $25, $26 an hour. And every year it goes up based on, the hours that you've earned and the experience that you've built up. And women, we love being able to master our trade and to do something so well and to be passionate about it. And we want to be able to do that and to bring our whole selves into the workplace. And so this socialization that actually happens from society to tell us that construction is not a place for us, it really needs to stop. Then again, there is a lack of information, because sometimes women just don't know that within the trades, there are so many different kinds of trades. You don't have to be a roofer. You can be an electrician, you could be a painter, you could be a plumber, you could be a drywaller. There's just so many different opportunities that are out there that women are not aware of. And again, because they were not socialized to understand the opportunities. It's in the school system as well. Women are screamed into particular areas or careers, and it needs to change. And sometimes it's not just the men who are telling the women this, it also comes from our parents and our mothers. And so it's a complex situation that definitely needs to change. But in the workplace, employers really need to know that they're missing out on a talented pool of people who could be helping to build up their communities and building infrastructure of this great country. And they should be tapping into women, and they might need to make some changes, like simple things, access to bathrooms, childcare, and other things that we have to be considerate. And what we do for women is also really good for men as well. So let's start there.
Well, in our remaining couple of minutes here, I wanted to go to Samuel. I love this expression, Samuel. If you can't see it, you can't be it. And the more we see it, the more opportunities, obviously, for those who are having trouble being it at the moment. What would you like to see happen in the days and years ahead, the obstacles, for example, that need to still be overcome?
So for me, Steve, the things I want to see, there are a couple of things. One, I want to see the possibility, I want to see come to life an equitable representation of Black, white, indigenous, and every group that we could associate Canada with. And I hope to go into a workplace to see employees at leadership positions that are people like myself. I hope to see women in leadership positions. I hope to see people of the indigenous communities in leadership positions. I hope to see the industry embracing businesses from underserved and underrepresented groups. This is my hope for the industry. And just to touch on Rosemary's point, we in Elliston, to make this happen, we are going back to the schools. We are going back into the community to say, we want to raise the awareness, the education, down to our high school students and elementary schools to say, construction is a place for you, irrespective of your race or your gender or your abilities or disabilities. Construction is also more than just wearing a vest and ADAT. There is a lot of components in the industry. And know what? Companies like Ellis Dunn and other community organizations like TCBN and also Spencer's organization are willing to help you and mentor you and coach you into having a successful career within this industry.
That's a great place to leave this. I want to thank the three of you for coming on to TVO tonight and helping us understand this issue so much better. Samuel Ajobo, Sefton Spence, Rosemarie Powell. Great to have you all on side tonight, and I hope you're all staying safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Have a great one. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And that is the agenda for Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. Sales of alcohol are up during this pandemic. Tomorrow, we'll find out why the Canadian Cancer Society is encouraging people to drink less throughout February and beyond. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.